Live with CDP, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast live on YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor FM. Now here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP podcast on this Thursday, June 9th, 2022, Season 3, Episode 49. I'm looking forward to my podcast tonight, and my guest tonight is Mike Mitchell. He's a pro football writer. Contributor with the XFL, which starts up in 2023. He does some stuff with the USFL, the NFL, CFL with the Toronto Argonauts, and he also does some writing for Jet Press, which is about the New York Jets, and he's also does some writing for Fansided as well. So I look forward to speaking to Mike tonight and talk a little football with him. And we got the start of the CFL season going on tonight too. TSN tonight at 9:00 Eastern. We have Montreal Alouettes taking on the Calgary Stampeders. So the CFL has now finished their training camp and preseason, and they start the regular season tonight at 9:00 on TSN. Calgary, Montreal. It should be a good matchup. So I'm really looking forward to speaking to Mike about covering the Argonauts for the CFL and also the USFL, which is back after a 3+ decade hiatus. It was around in the 80s and then it went under. So there's 8 teams in the USFL. I got to read up a little more about the USFL. I have to admit I haven't been following it a lot. But anyways, guys, just give me 1 second and I'm going to bring on Mike Mitchell. Good evening, Mike. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I can hear you. Can you see me, hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see it, but that's okay. Even if you can only come on audio, that's fine.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Chris. I appreciate what you're doing right now. Just starting up your career and, covering the CFL, obviously the Argos and everything else. I think it's great what you're doing. Yeah,
no, I'm a huge sports fan, and I've always liked sports. I've always been passionate about sports and broadcasting, but they didn't have this technology 25 years ago. So I'm very lucky to have this technology and to have great guests like yourself come on my podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, and I was just mentioning the CFL starts tonight, the opener, Montreal at Calgary at 9:00 on TSN.
Oh, it's tremendous. I'm so happy the CFL season has arrived. We're getting a normal CFL season. I know we had some craziness there leading in with the CBA and everything else to get to this point. But, after what happened with 2020 with the season being canceled and then, of course, last year's shortened season, which was fun. But, I think we're back to normal now, which is terrific. And I'm looking forward to watching Montreal and Calgary get it on tonight. It should be great.
I got to be honest, I really haven't followed a lot of the USFL right now. So maybe this weekend I'll try to catch some of the games and stuff like that. But I was going to say, Mike, overall, how has the return of the USFL gone so far, in your opinion?
It's fascinating. Just like quickly here on my background, as a kid in the 80s, a huge NFL fan, New York Jets, obviously, followed college football. But the 2 leagues I loved, which a lot of people didn't in America, at least from my neck of the woods, were the USFL and the CFL. And so I've been an Argos and a Generals fan my whole life. As far as like the current version of the USFL, I'm glad it exists. It gives more opportunities for football players. The product has been okay, all things considered. They had a very short training camp. Ratings have been okay. Attendance has not been great. But, ultimately, any entity out there that supports football players and that gives them an opportunity to continue their professional football careers, I support. It's something I've always been an advocate of since day one.
Well, it's just like basketball here in Canada. It's not just the NBA, and then you got the G League in the States, but you got now the Basketball League out of the States. You got the NBL of Canada, which I'm a media member of, and also the CEBL. So there's more opportunities for young players to develop their skills and possibly get into the NBA at some point as well. And you're right, that is a positive with with football too. Creates more jobs for these guys and gives them more of an opportunity to try to hone their skills and possibly make the NFL or the CFL in the future.
Yeah, I know it's a little bit different than youth sports in Canada, but, according to the NCAA here in the United States, only 1.9% of all college football players make the National Football League. So you're talking so many college football players. There's only 200 and whatever, it's 56 players that get drafted into the NFL, maybe a couple of hundred players who sign on as undrafted free agents. But you're talking about whatever, 98%, over 98% of college football players that are draft eligible do not make it into the National Football League. So what ends up happening to a lot of them? A lot of them, end up with Canada, which is tremendous. I mean, we have so many great American players that have played in Canada throughout the decades and all that. And then for a lot of them, they, because of the ratio and everything else, it's a little bit difficult to hit it in Canada. It's a little bit of a different game than it is in America. So it takes a while for a lot of American players to adjust to the Canadian style. And so the leagues like the USFL, the XFL, other leagues like that, they give these players an opportunity to continue playing, their careers professionally. And so some of them end up back in the NFL, some don't. But you know what? Even the ones that don't and that end up excelling in the CFL or other leagues, they're happy because they got an opportunity. There's just so many great stories in Canada and throughout CFL history of guys that came over, Americans that came over to Canada, and Canada's their home now, and the CFL is their love. So any avenue that is created that helps people fulfill their dreams and live out their dreams is a good thing. So I've always been maybe I consider myself a little bit of an underdog. I've always been a fan of the underdog. So I'm happy that these leagues exist. So it's great.
Okay. Now, question for you, Mike. Does the league own all the teams, or are there 8 different owners that own these USFL franchises?
It's pretty fascinating what they're doing. Fox owns the USFL, so it's a single entity. They're trying to do like an MLS type model where they're hoping that they get to the point where they can sell off each individual franchise. They have a unique setup because they have all their games being played in the city of Birmingham. Attendance hasn't been that great. Their hometown Stallions are doing really well. They're undefeated, and they're drawn okay, all things considered. A lot of $10 tickets free, kids getting in free, that kind of thing, trying to get people to come out to the games. But that's the current setup, the ownership structure. Fox owns it, and they're in this space because they and Disney were happy with the success they had with the XFL in 2020 in terms of ratings and attendance. And live sports right now is dominating ratings because it's the only thing you can't DVR. So it's like, there's so many viewing options out there. So a lot of these networks out there are looking for live sports content, and people love football, obviously. So Fox is giving it a go. Whether or not it'll work remains to be seen. But, it looks like because of their financial model, saving money, playing in a hub setting in Birmingham, that they're going to be back for year 2. What kind of league are they going to be year 2 and 3 and beyond? That remains to be seen. But it's kind of a fascinating deal, and the XFL is going to be the same. Single entity owned by Redbird Capital Partners, huge investment firm that has relationships with the Yankees and the Red Sox and Liverpool, AC Milan, and et cetera, Dallas Cowboys, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, everybody knows The Rock and Danny Garcia are part owners of the XFL. So, it's professional football is very expensive. People don't realize that. They think of it as minor league, but because of player insurance and everything else, it costs tens of millions of dollars to run and operate, and that's why often these outfits have had issues in the past financially because they bleed so much money. So Fox is trying to be fiscally responsible so they can get to year 2 and 3 and everything else. So we'll see how it goes. So far, okay. I wouldn't say it's a smash success. I wouldn't say it's a complete failure. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle.
I was going to say, next year, will they have the teams play in other locations, or will they just keep it at one location?
That's the goal, and that's one of the things that severely affected the quality of the USFL. The play on the field hasn't been bad. Coaches have done a nice job of Mike Riley and others, but it's affected the TV product that they don't have a great crowd atmosphere, crowd energy, and the plan for them is to now they have a contract with Birmingham to stay there as long as it takes to sell off the franchises. I believe it's multi-year, 3 years, I believe.
Okay.
So the sooner they're in markets, the better. Because obviously, you're not a fully fledged football league as far as I'm concerned, unless you are in markets and you have different cities engaged in your team and all that media and everything else. So we'll see where it goes with them. But so that's where they're at right now.
Okay, that leads to my next question. Thoughts on the XFL returning in 2023, and what kind of setup are they going to have, Mike?
It's very interesting. Today they announced their coordinators and their directors of player personnel. A couple of CFL names that people would recognize. Jamie Alessandro, things didn't really work out with him in Edmonton. He's going to be part of Heinz Ward's staff in San Antonio. June Jones, Not people familiar with that name. Obviously, he's been around the block for a long time. He's back in the XFL, but he's going to be an offensive coordinator. He was with Seattle and Jim Hasley. And so the XFL is very interesting because they're coming into this space now with, they're going to have a lot of marketing, a lot of promotion. They have a lot of money behind them with Redbird. Working with Disney is great for them. That's great for their exposure. They'll be on ABC and ESPN. They have a multi-year deal there, broadcast agreement to be on ESPN, ABC, ESPN Plus. And it's going to be fascinating to see what they do in terms of they haven't quite announced their cities yet or their team names. So a lot of people are speculating whether or not they're going to change some of their team names in 2020. They're supposed to play a week after the Super Bowl, which, there have been people who've argued against that in the past. And USFL has run into some issues because they started their season in April. They're finishing up soon in July. But a lot of the players who play in the USFL, they don't have an opportunity to latch on to the NFL because a lot of the NFL team rosters are already set. And by the time you get to July and August, they're getting ready for preseason games. So it's going to be hard for a lot of USFL players to make NFL rosters. There'll be some. But it's also difficult to play a full football season and then not have any time to recuperate in July and join an NFL team and try to make a roster there. So the XFL feels that from having a football league from February through April, late April, early May, will give players a better opportunity to latch on NFL teams, which is the reason why a lot of players just outside the NFL play in these leagues. And they're supposed to pay more. They're supposed to have larger rosters. So we'll see, there's good reason to doubt all these entities, but I'm glad that, and you never know, it might not work out. But I'm glad that Fox and Disney are at least giving it a shot. We'll see what happens. It could be over 1,000 players, playing next spring pro football in America, and that's good for them. That gives them an opportunity to do what they love.
My question is, how many franchises approximately for the XFL, and will there be a salary cap for each team in this league?
That's a good question. Last time it's 8 teams. Right now, the teams that I've been hearing are Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Seattle, Las Vegas, DC, Orlando, St. Louis. I said that twice. But yeah, those are the 8 teams. It's from what I've heard, $65,000 is American. Obviously, is going to be the average per player.
So similar to the CFL salary.
Yes. And American and the quarterbacks are supposed to be paid in the select quarterbacks will be paid in the 6-figure range. So yes, similar to the CFL. And I understand, as somebody who's followed the CFL my whole life, why there would be like some trepidation or worry that the CFL could be affected by these leagues existing. I mean, it's possible. I don't think that the XFL and the USFL have to prove themselves first before they can actually, let's just say, use the term poach CFL players. I will say, though, however, they might affect, like the XFL and USFL, they might affect the player in America that's considering going up. And they might, if they see 65,000, they might say, you know what, I'll stay here. I'll stay closer to home. I mean, that could be a factor. But as far as them going after CFL players at the moment, I think the XFL, as much as I'm rooting for all these leagues to succeed, I think the XFL and the USFL have to prove themselves first. And, the CFL is a proven entity. Even though it's had its own struggles, we know, we've heard all of it. But the CFL is a proven entity. So until proven otherwise, I see the CFL as a great option for players, but you never know down the road from what decisions America. It's good for the players. CFL is going to be bumping up their salaries. I'm sure the USFL is going to see what the XFL is doing. They're going to have to bump up their salaries. So it gives these players options. It may not hurt. It may hurt some of our favorite leagues. If we start losing players. Like, for example, I'll throw in a name here. Maybe this is like a scoop on this. But Cole McDonald did not show up for Argo's camp. He was put on their suspended list. And from what I heard, he's entertaining options in the XFL. So he's hoping to latch on with that. He was a 7th round pick in the NFL by the Titans, I believe it was. He played in Hawaii, so some people might connect him with June Jones. And since June Jones is back at the XFL in Seattle. So we'll see what happens there. But there might be players like that. I don't know what's going on with DJ Foster. I'm surprised he's not on the CFL roster. But when I heard that he asked the Argos to release him from his contract, and they granted him his request, my fear was that Foster was, looking to go back to America and try to latch on with the USFL team, and that hasn't happened yet. We're an XFL team. We'll see what happens. Eric Foster was very impressive for Toronto last year. He led the CFL in receptions amongst all running backs. So obviously that debut game was Winnipeg was tremendous. We were 400 yards at home, but We'll see what happens, but you worry about those things. If you're a CFL fan, a diehard CFL person, you definitely worry about losing some of those. I don't think you're going to lose any of your star players right now, but definitely some of those fringe players who are on the fence don't know. Because Foster saw the writing on the wall. Let's face it. I mean, the Argos are going Canadian at the position. They drafted Attaboye, and they, of course, Andrew Harris, the legendary Andrew Harris, is in the fold there. So, I mean, so Foster, as good as he is, and was last year for Toronto, I think he did a great job as a marketer. I have no problems with how he played, but I think he saw the writing on the wall and said,
I was going to say the CFL, 9 teams. They got a good TV contract with TSN. There seems to be stability within the leagues with the teams. My only question is, are they still going to have that 10th team in Halifax in the next couple years? I haven't heard any talk now since the pandemic.
Just a quick shout out to another podcast out there. I don't know if you ever caught them before, but it would be great for you to check them out. It's called the Marcast. They're supposed to have Randy and Rosie on Friday, and I think that's one of the questions. I've been needling the host of that show, Reed Johnson, asking about Halifax, asking about a 10 team, because that's what a lot of CFL fans want. It's easier said than done because you got to work out the financials, you got to figure out venues, stadiums, all that. But in a perfect world, I mean, there are 2 rooms for growth with the CFL, from where I sit, and that's expansion, which is not easy to do. It's not like the CFL's America where you have a million different places to go, obviously, but it would be nice if the CFL went to 10 teams. And I think growth, you can see some growth if they were to expand their TV package a little bit. I don't know how receptive TSN would be to all that, but it would be nice if people in Canada had more options to see CFL games rather than just being locked in there. I understand there's money involved in that. TSN is big exclusive rights for that. But I think you want to make it as available as possible, and you want to grow your TV package, streaming package, all these different things. I know CFL's trying on that front, but yes, I would pound on the table for a 10 team in the CFL. I would love to see it, but just to even out the divisions, to give more players an opportunity, and it would be more exciting. You have one additional game every week, so the Argos are not having a bye week in week 1, sitting on the sidelines, so to speak, when the CFL's back in play.
Definitely. Hey, I was going to ask you, Mike. I have an idea, and I don't know if the CFL listened to it, but they for 50 years they were on CBC here, where people in New York State and Michigan and the border cities could actually watch the CFL games. Maybe just work out a deal where they could have 1 game a week on the CFL or some special game of the week on the CFL on CBC, because that would get some more viewers on the border states like New York State and Michigan, like I mentioned. And I was going to ask you, you're from New York, so how did you end up watching the CFL games or covering the CFL, following it when you were growing up?
Oh, it's hard. So at CBC, and there were some American options. We didn't have the online access that we have now. So a lot of the stuff I did was relying on newspapers and whatever broadcasts were shown in America, and trying as best as I could to follow the league that way. Over the years, as we got into the internet age, a lot of, because TSN's not available, I don't know if I should say this on there, but a lot of, let's just say I put my computer in jeopardy streaming things. So I was like, so just to watch the CFL. I have ESPN Plus, which is great. I have ESPN, so I've watched all the Canadian games and CFL games that have been on there. So that's good. But it's not easy to have access to CFL action. I love the league. A big Flutie guy, big Damon Allen guy, pinball guy. So so I love the league. So it's been hard as an American. I've tried, probably should admit it to legal action streaming, but I got to tell you, sometimes you get lucky and people on YouTube will go ahead and do the live stream before it gets knocked down. So that shows you that there are people out there. But maybe I'm a crazy. But there are people out there that want to see this stuff. You just have to make it more accessible. Sometimes even the TSN, if you're an American, if you can't even sign up to a package to watch the games, which a lot of people would gladly do in the States. So, and you do have, as you mentioned, places like Michigan, California, all this stuff. Long-time CFL fans have probably done a lot of what I just said. Trying to work around watching these games and everything else. So, it's I think being on CBC and expanding your reach is important. Look at the NFL. I mean, nobody compares to the NFL. The NFL is an absolute monster, but they're available on every possible channel, streaming platform. You can watch your games online. You can do everything. So the CFL just needs to open it up for people, because that's a big factor. Like, we talk about fantasy. I play CFL fantasy too. We talk about gambling. I'm not that much of a gambler, but it's a huge part of football. The more accessibility, the more transparency you have, the more people you rope in. I hate to use that term because it sounds like you're trying to trick people, but the more people you'll get to watch your games, to pay attention to your players. I've convinced people to play CFL fantasy, and it's made them look at people's rosters and know about the Keon Schaefer Bakers and the Nick Dembskis and the Rasheed Baileys, and looking for the hidden gems and all that. So when you play fantasy, when you're a gambler, it forces you to have knowledge of every single team, every single roster. You start paying attention to everything. Where do they play? Did they play at McMaster? Or how were they used? That kind of thing. So that's stuff that makes the league immersive. So hopefully the CFL gets to the point where they make their league even more accessible. It's awesome that they use global players. It's awesome that they have global outreach and all that. But if you really want global outreach, and like your league, you want to create as many avenues as possible where people can access your league.
Definitely. And I was going to say, Mike, I was born in 72, so I'm an old guy. But back in the 70s and 80s, when I was growing up near Toronto, the games in Toronto and Hamilton and that were always blacked out. So I had to listen to the Argonaut games on CFRB 1010 in Toronto to get my Argonaut fix. And then when I got older as a teenager, I started losing interest in the CFL because the games weren't on TV, and the NFL, of course, was. And I think the blackouts they had in the 70s and early 80s really hurt the league with my generation of people growing up.
It's an excellent point. I remember a time like in the 80s where Toronto, the Argos were a big, big deal in that city.
Oh, yeah.
Like a big, big deal.
Oh, yeah.
All that. And then, missteps like that, what you just mentioned, Chris, is what ends up, how you end up having lapsed fans and losing fans. And I know Toronto's different than Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan, in very many ways, is like a Buffalo or Green Bay.
Green Bay, yeah.
It's like basically, that's all those. I'm not trying to insult those towns. I love their fans, very passionate, but that's all those towns have. That's all those cities have, right? So Toronto, you got a lot of options. You're competing. It's a beautiful city. There's so many entertainment options. There's so many options for people. So Toronto kind of got put in the back burner, and then the Argos, and I find it silly to me that it's they struggle sometimes to get fans in the stands and all that, because I think it's like one of the most beautiful and historic franchises in all of sports. I love everything about the Argos history, uniforms, colors, everything. Players, everybody who's been a part of that organization, that franchise. So it's just surprising to me that it's not as popular in Toronto as it was a few decades ago. So it's but those things that you mentioned were definitely factors. You're losing accessibility to your own league in your own country, in your own city. That's ridiculous. So those are missteps along the way that have hurt, the Argos brand.
Well, also, Mike, too, stability. For many years, the Argos went through owners, they went through GMs, through coaches, players, too. And that's the key thing. If they're going to stay in Toronto long term, survive there, they need stability, which they have now with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. They have that with Bill Manning, their president. Mike Pinball Clements is a GM. And then Ryan Dinwiddie seems to be a very good coach that looks like going to be there long term. Because when I grew up in the 70s and early 80s, I knew the Argos roster. Carnage Holloway, Cedric Menner, Terry Greer, Don Moen, Paul Pearson. And the fans need to be able to identify with players. Obviously, the game has changed since the 70s and 80s with free agency. But if fans can identify with players with that team and the coaches and the general managers and have stability with ownership, then the team could succeed long term.
I completely agree with you, Chris. The Argos do need to have cornerstone players that last a long time, and I think the current organization has done a tremendous job. Pinball's fantastic. Aaron Dinwiddie's very promising young coach. Had an excellent first year on the job last year, so to speak. So, and top to bottom, I covered the Argonauts for CFLNewsHub.com, and that organization has been nothing but friendly and outgoing and courteous. There's so many good people that work in that, in the Argos, with the Argos social media department and PR department and team. And so they're an easy group to root for. I mean, pinball's got to be one of the most likable human beings on the planet. So it's hard not to. You want the Argos to succeed. These kind of people that are involved in it. Yeah, I'm already. I'm not supposed to say it because I'm a journalist. I'm an Argos fan, so I want to see them win. but they have special people involved in that building, in that organization, makes you want them to succeed even more.
I was going to say, and thanks to Mike Hogan, who's their manager of communications and radio play-by-play announcer, and Chris Billinoff, he's their media relations manager. They hooked me up with a media pass, and I loved my opportunity at the game in Guelph here last Friday with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And the Argonauts have given me an opportunity to expand myself, not just for my podcast, but to doing live interviews with coaches and players and just seeing what it's like to be a media member at a professional sporting event.
Yeah, it's great that they rolled out the red carpet. They've done that for me since, I officially started covering the league last year. And, they give them media credentials and all that. So I'm looking forward to, it's not easy with family and business and everything else, but I'm looking forward to this season, perhaps meeting with you, Chris. I'm looking forward to coming out to an Argos game, which I would love to, and, cover the team from the press box and watch. And, that's going to be a great experience. I've never been to BMO, so I'm looking forward to it. So and it's great how they treated people like you and others out there in the field, Ben Grant, other guys who commit their time and their efforts and insights towards the Argos. I love the team, and I think the Argos organization appreciates people like you.
And you'll love BMO Field because it's a beautiful outdoor stadium. It's a grass field, and it's on the site of where the old exhibition stadium was. So it's about 1.5 miles from downtown, but it's easy access, lots of parking and public transportation. And it's the site where I grew up, being an Argos fan in the 70s and the early 80s, being at that site. And it's a beautiful ballpark or stadium. It was built for soccer originally, but it's been great for the CFL, and it's nice to have the only grass field in the CFL. All the other fields are all AstroTurf now, but you'll like it. And I'm going to be trying to go to a game the end of July against Ottawa, and then I'm looking at August 20th. Attending a game against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. So Chris told me just to send him an email. So those are the couple games I'm looking to come down to. And hopefully I'll get to meet you down at BMO Field this summer.
That would be tremendous. I consider anybody who covers the Argos part of my crowd, part of my family. So, anybody who's an Argos fan, you're an extended part. So it would be. I'm looking forward to it. It's on my bucket list. That's something that, I really need to get around and do it. So I'm hoping that's coming soon. I think July 4th is going to be a hot ticket. We're talking about the Bombers, and Andrew Harris, that, if I'm not mistaken. So that would be an ideal spot. We'll see what happens.
Definitely. Nice. Are you still good for a few more minutes? So a few questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, no problem. Mike, I just wanted to ask you one. Can you just tell my audience here in Guelph just a little bit about yourself? And when did you decide you wanted to pursue a career in journalism as a writer?
I'm a lot like you, Chris. It's like something that, something that I've been pursuing a little bit later in my life. It's something I did when I was in high school as a writer, covering sports, that kind of deal. And then I wrote about the XFL back in 2001. There's a website called xflboard.com. I used to write on the message board back when that was a big thing before Twitter and all this. And then I applied to write and cover the New York team. So I actually ended up getting a press pass, going to a Giant stadium, which it was at the time, and I covered the league for that entire year, and they finished that season. And so that was a lot of fun. And then, life is life. And then I, journeyed into other things. And a couple of years back when I heard that the XFL was returning, and I remembered, as a young man when I was going out to the games and press pass and writing about the team, I said, what? Let me reach back to XFL Board and see if they're up and running. And they were, and surprisingly, after all those years, and I said, on the side here, as this like a side move, I'll cover the XFL in my spare time. And so I'll just get back to writing and get back to covering sports. And then one thing led to another, and then I started getting noticed and interacting with players and agents and executives and everything else and other websites. And then I started writing about the New York Jets, and then all these craziness with all these different leagues sprouted up. And then, I started writing about then I got the opportunity to write about the CFL, which is a dream come true. It's pretty crazy right now. My three favorite football teams growing up the Argos, the Jets, and the Generals, I'm covering all three of those teams. So
Awesome.
yeah, so it's fun. So I haven't, this is something that you're passionate about, and that listen, anytime you can do, of course, money's important, and you have to pay bills, obviously. You don't want the lights to go off. And they keep sending those things in the mail, or at least on our phones. But but anytime you can find something in life that you do that you're passionate about, that you love, um, there's no such thing. You say better late than never. There's no such thing as too late. I think it's inspirational that someone like you, someone like myself, like many other people out there that are exploring this and giving this a go. This is something you're passionate about. So, just give it all you got and just enjoy the ride while you're doing it. And so, and that's what I would say as far as advice for anybody out there, no matter what field you're in. Find what you love to do and do it. And then, and so I know life's hard sometimes because you've got a lot of responsibilities, a lot of different things. But if you can find the time to do it, I would say go ahead and just give it a shot. You got nothing to lose, and it's fun to do. Sometimes there are people out there who do this that don't make a lot of money, that struggle, that put their own money into things. And so, they don't get the recognition they feel they deserve, or the views, or all that. They work very hard at it. So it can be a struggle for sure. But just as long as you keep in mind that you're doing something that you love, that you want to do, then you're going to be happy. If anything comes after that in terms of financial reward or more notoriety and all that, that's great. I'm an older guy, not that old, but I'm an older guy, and I kind of suck at social media, so I'm surprised sometimes because I don't tweet 100 times a day. I'm surprised sometimes that I have the followers that I do. I really like just writing about pro football and writing articles, and then I hope people check those out. And sometimes I do very good traffic on that, which is great. But it's just I'm not really into this for the social media aspect of it. I'm really more about providing whatever insight I got in my cranium, and writing about the teams as I love covering.
I was gonna say, and like I said, I'm on the social media part of it as well, and like you said, it takes time too, Mike. I've come a long ways in 2.5 years, and 2.5 years ago, I couldn't get any guests to come on. I didn't have much of an audience, and now and I've been lucky to get 3, 4, 5 guests a week to come on, and guys like Dan Shalaman and Chuck Swirsky and Eric Smith, and guys I never, Tom McCarthy from the NFL and CBS have, and yourself have been very lucky. I was going to say, somebody told me this too. It's not how you start a game or start life; it's how you finish it. And everybody knows that I'm almost 50. I'll be 50 at the end of June, but they don't treat me like I'm 50 years old. And like I said, I'm willing to work hard. I'm willing to learn and try to keep improving every podcast.
Well, it's funny. Like, that's great, Chris, and you're like still in the early stages planting seeds, and so they can grow. I mean, I never. A couple of years ago, 2018, when I joined social media and I started covering the XFL again because they said they'd be returning, and they did in 2020. I didn't have that very many followers. I just liked writing about the team. But then, I can't believe it. Randy Ambrosi follows me. Warren Moon follows me. I've got players on my favorite teams that follow me. And the Argos, obviously, it's a little bit different in CFL because this is one of the things I love about CFL is the players attach themselves to the teams, and to the fans, and to the writers and the journalists, and that's a little bit different. But I do have NFL players who follow me too, and coaches. And when Chris Mortensen followed me, I couldn't believe it. When you got people inside the leagues following you and talking about your work, asking you about your article, sometimes they might be a little upset about something you wrote. I've gotten that on a few occasions, but some opinion I had or what have you. But that happens. But it's you never know. If you just keep working at it, put out good work. It's hard in this landscape. It's very easy to be ignored. There are so many damn podcasts out there. There's so many people writing articles. I have a hard time writing articles myself. Sometimes I get writer's block. I'm like, I want to write about something that no one else is talking about. Because if I write about the New York Jets, there's 790 articles every day about Zach Wilson is going to improve this year. So, like, what angle do I take that someone else has? So I try to do that with the Argos too. So it's fascinating process, but if you work at it and you put a lot of respect into what you're doing, try to do the best possible job you can over time. Eventually, you'll plant seeds that grow, and so um, it could be bumpy sometimes along the way. But I think I'm no master at social media. I'm no master at this. I'm trying as best as I can. I'm just enjoying what I'm doing. So I can't believe I have 6,000 followers.
Yeah. And like I said, yeah, and my YouTube channel, a couple years ago, I had 0 subscribers, and now I got about 106. Not a lot, but it's baby steps, baby steps.
That's good. And then you got those 106 people. Well, to me, that tells me that's a lot, because those 106 people, they like what you're bringing to the table. You're providing content. People want to talk about the articles. People want to talk about the CDP. People want these types. I'm glad Hogan and Natalia J are doing the podcast every week. I get to listen to it. I enjoy X's and Argos and the Argos fan. I love these podcasts that talk about the Argos. It's tremendous. And then yourself too, included now. So I mean, the more the merrier. I think it's great. I think these teams need it. They need. And fans are looking for it. Fans want to read it. When I first started writing a CFL News.com, I said, well, I'm an American site here. And I don't know if people would even respect it. So, and then when I see my readership and how many people are reading my articles, I'm like, holy cow! And then players are reading it, and then family members of players are reaching out to me, say thank you, or sometimes why don't you include my son or whatever in the article or what have you. But it's cool to have that kind of interaction and see that, and so it's part. There's some very good aspects of all this. So when you have 106 subscribers, I think that's great. I think to me, that tells me that can grow over time as well. But that tells me that there's 106 people that want to listen to what you have to say, and they love your guest, and they love the fact that you're focusing on the topics that you do.
Well, thank you. And I'm also, Mike, in the last few months, I've taken up blogging. So when I attend now these media events, which have been given to me as with a member of the National Basketball League of Canada, with the CFL, with the Argonauts, the Ontario Hockey League, what I do is I write a game day blog about my experience and then that sporting event I'm attending. So I've still got a long ways to go to improve my writing skills, but I figure that's just another skill to have with the blogging, my podcasting. I do volunteer work with Rogers TV out of the Toronto area as a camera operator. So I'm trying to do as much as I can to learn as much as about this media industry as I can and just try to keep improving my skills.
It's great. Like you've been allowed into the party already. So you want to be a permanent guest and go to more parties, obviously. But you're already in. You're already in, Chris. You may not feel that way sometimes. You may think, oh man, what's going on? Am I here? Am I invisible? But you're ready. When you look at it, you got the Argos, you got all that different stuff you just mentioned. You got all that stuff. You've been invited to the party. Just be a good guest when you're there. So this is good, just kind of the way it goes. But I think that goes for anybody out there who's pursuing whatever they like. So I think it's cool what you're doing, Chris.
Thanks. And I'm covering like eight or nine sports now, and I'm also a new fan of the National Lacrosse League, and I'm hooked on the Lacrosse League now. The boxed. I guess there's two types of lacrosse: field lacrosse and box lacrosse, and I love the indoor game with the Buffalo Bandits, who had me as a media member there, and the Toronto Rock. And to be honest, lacrosse I love the sport. It's like a combination of hockey and basketball.
It's tremendous. You have to be a great athlete to do it, and it's very difficult. It can be exciting, and that's the thing. I'm not saying the National Lacrosse League and lacrosse leagues in general don't have viewership or follows and all that, but those types of leagues, they want people to cover their leagues and to give them attention. They get ignored. It's such a giant sporting landscape, so they'll appreciate you even more if you cover them, if you write about them, if you blog about them, if you interview them, because when there's not a lot of outlets that do. So that's great that you have an open mind and you're trying different sports and you're looking into different things. That's terrific.
And I like doing these live interviews because with my podcast, I can prepare and have stuff written down. But when you do a live interview, it's strictly from your head. And it's just another experience for me. And like I said, with the pandemic the last couple of years, I was only able to do the podcast, which was great. But now that things have opened up, it's nice to be at live sporting events and actually being able to report from a football stadium or a hockey or a basketball arena as well.
It's a fun experience. Yeah, I'm glad COVID hasn't gone away, but I'm glad that we've gotten to the point in society where we're dealing with it better. and things are working out more. So that's
Definitely.
terrific. Yeah, pretty crazy there for a stretch, and hopefully we don't have any other craziness coming our way. I mean, it's still here, I know, but
Yeah. And now we got to worry about the gas prices.
oh god, it's not one thing; it's the other, right? So
That's true.
yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, there's a lot of craziness going on in the world for sure.
Okay. This question I wanted to ask you. Can you just tell my audience about your current role as a pro football writer? Obviously for the CFL, the Argonauts, the NFL you cover with the Jets, USFL, and then the XFL when it starts up next year. And then your work with Fansided, I noticed, and the Jet Press.
Right. So I'm a contributor at Fansided. They reached out to me, and I applied, and I'm a New York Jets fan, obviously. So I write for them. It's amazing the amount of views NFL articles do. My last article with the Jet Press did over 200,000 views. So it's pretty great. Um, I did this to myself, so I have no one else to blame. But I'm covering so many leagues right now that it's a little difficult. I'm trying as best as I can. I do TV ratings too for the USFL, and I covered the New Jersey Generals. I just wrote an article about Darius Fitch. I write for and work for USFLnewshub.com. I'm covering the XFL for XFLnewshub.com. I've got an article that I'm working on. I'm going to try to finish it at some point, publish it tomorrow, about the league's new coordinators and personnel directors and all that. Obviously, covering the Argos, just published an article earlier today about the Argos, talking about how different the team is from 2021. How people don't kind of realize how many changes have been made. Usually when teams like the Argos get to one step away from the Grey Cup, so teams will have a tendency to not change their team very much. And you look at the Argos, I guess by necessity, because everybody knew Chris Jones would be, but didn't really change pretty much his entire coaching staff. There's a few guys here and there that it's an entirely new defense. A lot of different people on offense with him because they went to Edmonton with Chris Jones. So. And then obviously the team's looking for leaders and players who can make big plays in clutch situations. So that's why Andrew Harris, Jabari Davis are on board, because the Argos saw firsthand in the East Final, how important it is to have players who can make big plays in big games. And that's unfortunately what happened to the Argos when Dane Evans and Jabari Davis stepped up. Dane Evans was ridiculous. Pitched a perfect game, so to speak. And then coming off the bench, and then Jabari Davis destroyed all those chances. So basically, single-handedly breaking the shot plus a major in the end zone. So anyway, but yeah, I cover the Argos for CFLnewshub.com, and they've been the Argos PR department's been great, and I try to get involved in media scrums and ask questions, and I've had access to Ryan Goodwin, and I've been able to ask him questions and that asked it. So I'm trying to cover as much of this as I can. I try to cover the business side of these leagues, and I'll try to cover the team side as well. And so not enough hours in the day to do this stuff. So I'm trying as best as I can to juggle all this. It's quite a bit, but it's fun.
I was going to say, and the Argonauts last year, they had a nice season, 9-5, and they got to the East Final at home against Hamilton. They were up 12-0, but one issue with the Argonauts club last year, if there was any negatives in a 9-5 season, which was outstanding, was the offense could not get touchdowns when they needed it. As much as I like field goal kickers and the 3 points, football games in the playoffs especially, field goals will get you beat. And that's what happened. They let Hamilton off the hook in that Eastern Final, in my opinion, when they were up 12-0, and that's what did them in. They just didn't have the ability to put Hamilton away with that dagger with the touchdown drive or two.
I absolutely agree, Chris. And when you get closer in that red zone, you need guys like Andrew Harris, right? To use his drive and determination to score. And they should have been up by more than 12-0. And then you can kind of tell sometimes, people use that term football gods. Yeah. But Dane Evans play right before the end of the half. It's like one of those plays where you feel like a dark cloud. Like even though the Argos are still leading, you kind of like it's one of those plays where you threw the interception and then Dane Evans made that tremendous. It's a tremendous. You have to tip your hat. I know he's a tight cat, but that was a heck of a play. And then so he stripped the defender. They got the football back, and even though they were still down 12-0, you kind of had the sense, and maybe this is just me, like something's wrong. And so I think the Argos, I get in trouble for this. I think the Argos season last year was a heck of a season. They had the most players on the injured list, and they did a great job. Holy. I think the Argos season, in a way, last year was fool's gold. And I think the organization showed you that because they were involved in a lot of close games. And if it wasn't for Boris Beatty, who I contend was the MVP for the Argos, if it wasn't for Boris Beatty, they wouldn't have won a lot of those close games. There were games where, even in the East Final, Boris Beatty taking 5-6 field goals, whatever it is. So, I mean, they couldn't get in the end zone, as you mentioned. But I think a part of last season for the Argos, they won a lot of these close games. I think they were 7-0 in close games or 6-1 in games decided by 7 points or less. So, and I think the Argos went and they knew that, maybe we're not as good as our record indicated. We need to get better. So I think that's why they went out with Andrew Harris. I think that's why they got Jamal Davis. I think that's why they changed their defensive scheme. And so, with Gordon Mace, I'm excited about opportunity. So I think, because a lot of teams will rest on their laurels. They go, hey, we were good enough. Let's not mess with a good thing. We won 9 games. We did this. And then what happens is those teams will fall off. And if you're not going forward, you're going backwards. And there's a lot of those teams will rest on their laurels. I think the Argos went out and they decided, we need some big time players and we need to shake things up a little bit, which is not what a lot of teams will do if they get that far. So I think that was a smart move on their part. We'll see if it pays off. I think sometimes when you get superstar players, it doesn't work out. It sounds great on paper, Brandon Banks, Andrew Harris, Jared Davis, etc. Sometimes it doesn't work out in pro sports. Hopefully it does for them. I think the Argos think that it will, and that these guys, cross your fingers, stay healthy, that they're going to make the difference when they get into that big game situation again. They're going to take them over the top. Andrew Harris will go over defenders again. Jared Davis will not allow Dane Evans to go whatever it was, 18 of 18. Where he, basically was able to make a sandwich on the body. He's fine. No pressure whatsoever there. So, so I think, the Argos, it's going to be a difficult task this year, because I think because of Montreal and Hamilton, and Ottawa will be improved, it's not going to be easy to win 14 games and run away with the East. Those teams will all kind of knock each other off a little bit. Maybe Ottawa will get a few sneaky wins here and there. So, it's Toronto certainly has the talent to compete for a Grey Cup. No question about it. They need to stay healthy. McLeod needs to raise his game and play at a specific level. He needs to play a little bit better than he did last year. And so, and I think the Argos have a tremendous receiving core. So top to bottom there. So I think there's potential there for them to hoist the trophy again, but it's not going to be easy.
I was going to say, quick thoughts on Chad Kelly. Austin Simmons is number 2, number 3, and Speedy Banks they got from the Tiger Cats. My only concern, like you mentioned, is the health, but the age of these guys too. Andrew Harris and Speedy Banks do have a lot of football miles on them. So my only concern is if they can still contribute at a high level for another year.
Andrew Harris is not old by any stretch, and he doesn't look like it. But when you're in the 34, 35, 36 range as a running back, you are old. And then you worry on an 18-game schedule whether or not he can hold up. That's why the Argos' depth at that position is important. You saw it last year, like with Winnipeg. Like Andrew had some issues staying on the field. When he was on the field, when they needed him the most, he came through, rushed for over 130 yards and a touchdown against Saskatchewan in the West Final. That got him to the Grey Cup. And then they had a good game against Hamilton as well. So you want to keep Andrew fresh and healthy because he's one of the greatest running backs in the history of the league, and when the game's on the line, he's fresh. So you worry about that. Guys like Speedy B and all that, who's gotten rave reviews from Ryan Dinwiddie in camp for picking up the offense, for the way he's mentoring other players and all that, which is stuff that people didn't know about Speedy. They thought maybe he's a flashy player, he got it, and so. Maybe he's not wrapped up in the playbook, that kind of thing, but he's kind of shattered that perception, that stereotype against them. So, Chad Kelly's an interesting situation there. Chad Kelly has elite physical tools, but the Argos are taking a little bit of a gamble, because he's one step away. Is he ready to operate a CFL offense now? It is hard for American rookies to transition into the CFL. It takes time. I know a lot of the CFL's top quarterbacks are American, but it took them time to get to where they got to. So, by the way, I'm rooting for the CFL this great year. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But Chad Kelly certainly has the talent. I just don't know if he's ready to take over the offense. The Argos see themselves as a championship contender. So if McLeod Bethel-Thompson were to miss some time, can Kelly come in and function? And that might be Pipkin, it didn't take long for him to land on a CFL roster. And I understand his his ceiling is much lower than Chad Kelly's, but he's got a higher floor right now. So if the Argos got in a situation where they didn't have McLeod, he could have held the fort, so to speak, and helped the Argos weather that storm. But you wonder with Kelly, he certainly has superstar potential. You can see the talent. You can see it's hard not to. And to get enamored with it. And he's had the right attitude, and he's done a great job connecting with his teammates and his organization. It's not easy making that transition. You almost have to be reprogrammed as an American quarterback coming into Canada. You just got to learn different things: the width of the field, the speed of the game. You only got 2 downs to get 10 yards, get a first down. You don't get a mulligan on 3rd down. So it's your punt. Even if you don't get it done, it's up and down. So that's kind of the story there. But there's some fascinating storylines for sure with the Argos and with a lot of the key players.
I was going to say, he does have a great arm, and he does have good mobility. It's just a matter of reading the CFL defenses and getting his reps. You're right. I don't know if he's quite ready yet to step in if McLeod Bethel Thompson gets hurt. So I guess they're taking a bit of a chance at having 2 rookies back up McLeod. Do you think there's possible during the regular season they could pick up another veteran quarterback in case for insurance?
I think they could. I think they could make a trade. I'm starting to wonder about their depth at certain positions because they got rid of certain DBs. We wonder about the offensive line and all that. So part of me was thinking maybe they would use their depth at another position to trade for a quarterback. It's not easy. It's not easy finding guys off the street. You can just walk right in, learn a system, and perform. So I was a little bit surprised by I understand why they wanted to give Chad Kelly more reps and get him ready throughout the season. But it's a little bit of a risk, not having somebody behind. And it's not easy. It's easier said than done. You can try, hypothetically. But, if the Argos wanted to, perhaps they could dangle one of their wide receivers, like a Marquise Ambrose or somebody like that, and try to see if they can get Dakota hookup, or one of these guys, maybe somebody that has some level of experience in the CFL that has played a little bit. Not that you're going to win no disrespect, not you're going to win a breakup with those guys, but at least somebody can function. Kelly, we're going to find out. The Argos are taking a risk. Now, I would love to believe that Kelly gets on the field and he's great at the game.
And right now, from what I saw in training camp and the preseason game, sorry.
I'm sorry. He'll have great moments from time to time because he just has great talent, but I just can't see. I hope I'm wrong. So I can't see him being consistent right now.
And from what I've seen so far, Mike, it's probably the case in most CFL teams right now. To me, the strong suit on the Argos right now, to me, is their defense. I think their defense is going to be solid. I think they're going to have a good pass rush. They got good linebackers, and they're going to be a ball hawking secondary.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be ball hawking based on their scheme. Maybe it's when you look at the East Final, a lot of the guys who started that game are no longer with the team, right? So obviously, Chris Edwards is suspended to start the season. We'll see for how long he's out. Hopefully, he's able to appeal that. And I think it's a little harsh that he got 6 games, so hopefully that's reduced to 3. Shaq Richardson is returning to the team. He's currently on the suspended list. He was injured. He missed all the camp. The Argos need him back there. I'm a big fan of Jamal Peters. I think he's very good on the corner and the outside there. But, they got some new bodies there. Royce Mechie, Deshaun Amos. You hope these guys can stand up. Tavares McFadden, very talented guy. Watched him play in the XFL. He was an all-XFL player. On FSU, he was a big-time player, too. He was tall, lanky, got a lot of talent. We'll see, though. I think they're banking on him starting on the outside and being a factor. They think he's a potential superstar. So, without Chris Edwards, and you hope they're not without Shaq Richardson against Montreal. And so, those are 2 of your very best players in the secondary. You need those guys. And so, there's definitely a lot of talent. The pass rush has a chance to be really good. You want Shane Ray to live up to what he showed you last summer before he had a bunch of injuries. We know about Garrett Davis. We know about Sean Oakley. Another player played in the XFL, a very good player, a very good year. He was all CFL last year. So, there's definitely some talent there. McManus was a big signing. I think the weak side linebacker position in the CFL is going to be more important moving forward because of the change to the hash marks. So you're going to have to cover more space. So I think you're starting to see that in the preseason, and I think you'll see some of that brought up to tonight's broadcast. That's where Montreal and Calgary, you'll definitely see those aspects there. But Yeah, these are all important players for the mix. Maybe I have tempered enthusiasm. I want to see it play out first, but they certainly have some premium talent. You just got to get them on the field again.
I'm going to put you on the spot with this question, Mike. How many wins do you see the Argos getting in 2022?
I'm going to say 11. Yeah, another one last year, 9 last year in a shortened season. They were 9-5, and really that last loss against Edmonton was good. They would have easily won that game. Team C. I think it might be a little tough in the East, like I mentioned earlier in this conversation, to run away with the division for 14 games. I think Montreal, Montreal and Hamilton, so there are a lot of people who doubt those teams, but when you look at Montreal and Hamilton, they still have elite players. Dane Evans might be the best quarterback in the division, arguably. Simone Lawrence, I know a lot of people hate him, but he's a heck of a player. Always has been. Hamilton's loaded. When you look at the all CFL team, a lot of Ticats are on that roster. First team all CFL players. Montreal has William Stanback and Geno Lewis. Maybe the best 1-2 wide receiver. There's a lot of good ones in the CFL for sure. But Jake Weineke and Geno Lewis are pretty damn good. We'll see what happens with Vernon Adams and Trevor Harris. I think in the East, you might need 12 or 13 to win the whole thing. But right now, I think I'm in a wait and see mode with the Argos. I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be in contention to win the Grey Cup. I think they can win the East. I think it's possible that they don't. But we'll see. We'll see. They're definitely going to be good if they stay healthy. The Argos are talented. They're deep. They're loaded. I like Ron Dinwiddie. I like the staff. I just have a few question marks in my mind, and I think the competition is pretty damn good from where I sit.
Okay. And what's your Grey Cup matchup right now if you had to predict a Grey Cup matchup in 2022?
It's not sexy, and a lot of people are going against this right now. I have a hard time betting against. I know they lost big time players. I have a hard time betting against Michael Shea and the Bombers. I think they are we'll see this year. They're going to be challenged because they lost, obviously, Andrew, Waller, all that. But I think the Bombers are the most fundamentally sound. I'm not surprised Michael Shea's their coach. They're the most fundamentally sound team on offense, defense, and special teams. They're you don't see that team have unforced errors and make stupid plays, tough blocks. They're just so well run. And they have a good quarterback. They have a nice, stable running back. I love Nick Dembski and Rasheed Bailey. I know it's not sexy. A lot of people are picking Calgary. I can understand. Saskatchewan's a favorite to go home and win in Regina. I would say Winnipeg over Toronto, which was, something I thought was going to happen last year, which a lot of people were on board with. I think that could be, but it would not shock me at all if Montreal or Hamilton. I think Winnipeg, Toronto could be the Grey Cup, and then it's the Argos have enough talent to beat Winnipeg. I have a great amount of he's a former Argo, so I have a great amount of respect for it. For sure.
I was gonna say too, Winnipeg's trying to three-peat. The last CFL team to win 3 Grey Cups in a row was the 78-82 Eskimos, the Edmonton Eskimos, who won 5 Grey Cups in a row. And I'm gonna say this: you'll never see that again in any professional sports. A team winning 5 consecutive championships.
Yeah, that's in this day and age too, and free agency and everything else. The way things change quickly, they're gonna have a hard time winning a third one. I don't know if BC and Edmonton are, I know they're sexy choices by some people. I don't know if they're ready yet. And I think Saskatchewan is good, no doubt about it. Would not shock me if they're in the Grey Cup. Calgary is a model of consistency in the league. Every year it seems they're good. Even when they're not so good, they're in the playoffs. So, so it's hard to discount any of those teams. It's just there's something about we'll see, but there's something about the Bombers, the way they draft, the way they develop players, the big thing is the way they coach. They play defense. They play very good defense consistently. They get the job done running and throwing the ball. Sometimes it's not pretty, but they're a lot like their coach. And in the CFL, it's not easy, like you said. Now in today's day and age, of winning multiple championships in a row, it's hard to envision. They've gotten 2, even though 1 was canceled. They've gotten 2 in a row. Whether they can get 3 or not remains to be seen. I know that the fans of Rough Rider fans would be pissed off if you use that language, but if Winnipeg's winning and hoisting a Grey Cup on their field,
Okay. And before I let you go, Mike, if you got maybe 5 more minutes or whatever, I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan, but since you cover the New York Jets, do you have 5 minutes just to quickly talk about the return of the NFL and your New York Jets? And do you see this team improving this year and maybe possibly, obviously, Buffalo's the clear favorite to win the AFC East, but maybe the Jets could battle for second or third in that division?
It's going to be tough. The AFC is so good. There's so many good teams. I think with the Jets, this is like a very important year for their regime. Joe Douglas has done a very good job of accumulating young talent. They obviously got really good use for the recent draft. They did a very good job with that. They're improving, but at some point they got to get to a point. They weren't expected to win last year. They got to get to a point where they're at least by the time December and January comes, where they're in contention for a playoff spot. I think the time has come. The AFC is so difficult. You might have a team that has a 9 or 10 win roster, but because the conference is so hard and challenging, you might only win 8 or 7. So can the Jets get to the point where they're not at the bottom of the league with 1 or 2 wins, 3 wins, 4 wins, where they're actually at least in the mix, at least, and I think they can get there. They've been a snake-bitten franchise. Even last year, they had very good young players who all got hurt. They couldn't get their entire receiving core on the field at the same time. The top offensive lineman got hurt, their left tackle, their left guard, their first round pick, so Elijah Moore. So it's been a long time since they've been relevant. They've been making a lot of good moves. They've saved up cap room. Now they got to start producing results. I don't think anybody expects them to be a playoff contender this year. I would be shocked if they were. But I think, if they're in that 2 or 3 or 4 win range, I think it would be a huge disappointment. I think the team, the team needs to get to the point where they're, at least in that 7, 8 win range. Because if they're not, a year from now, if they're back to being a 2 or 3 win team, a year from now, Joe Douglas, unfortunately Robert Saleh, who I love, they're both going to be in a lame duck situation. So it's kind of like playoffs or bust. So it's going to be hard to justify if they only win 2 games or 3 games this year, and getting a long-term extension of being a part of the franchise. It's a shame because I think they've actually made a lot of the right moves. It all comes down to the quarterback at the end of the day. Zach Wilson, who quietly, the media ignored it, played well down the stretch, limited his turnovers, 9 touchdowns in the week, 2 turnovers, started improving his completion percentage. He did a lot of that without his receivers. So he was getting better. It's a big year for him. He needs to take the next step.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. Who wins the Super Bowl this year at Glendale, Arizona?
I'm going with the Bills.
Buffalo Bills?
I'm thinking, they have just way too much talent. It's long overdue for that franchise. I lived the 90s where they got the 4 straight Super Bowls that came up short. I just think they have the most talent. I think top to bottom, they have arguably the best quarterback of the entire league, most talented. Josh Allen is a special. He's got the best arm. He's tremendously mobile. He's difficult for defenses to tackle in the open field. He extends plays. They've got very good young talent in the receiver position. He makes their players, their team, their skilled players better. That's how good he is. I think they have good coaching. Top to bottom, the front office is terrific. They've loaded up. I think the Bills are finally going to win a Super Bowl.
Okay, and I was going to say, I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. From an outsider's point, where do you, Mike, see the Eagles? Can they win the NFC East, or is it Dallas's division still?
I think the Eagles can win the NFC East. That was a huge acquisition getting A.J. Brown. It's all up to Jalen Hurts now. Because they have A.J. Brown was the type of receiver they needed for their offense. The Eagles were very good running back. Anytime you have I think they were in the top 5. I can't recall off the top of my head. Anytime you have a running quarterback like that, you're going to have a good running game. And they were one of the top teams rushing the football, and they made the playoffs last year. So I think they can get better this year. I think they had a good draft, good offseason. I think A.J. Brown could be a difference maker. Hurts has to stay healthy, which is a little bit difficult for mobile quarterbacks. It's hard to stay on the field because when you start taking abuse that running backs take on a weekly basis, that catches up to you. So like Lamar Jackson was. So I think the Eagles can win the NFC East, and they were a playoff team last year, and I think they have a chance to be better this year. So I'm bullish on their chances. Like any situation, it's up to Hurts, and Hurts has to stay healthy. So, but I think they have the makings there of having a complete offense and a very good defense, underrated.
Okay, and who do you see coming out of the NFC to take on Buffalo in the Super Bowl?
It's hard to overlook the Rams because they're just so loaded. I don't know where they're getting all this money from to keep all their best players and all that. But they obviously Cooper Cup deservedly so, and Aaron Donald deservedly so got new deals, monster deals. The Rams are just very good, and I think Matthew Stafford's even going to be even better in his second year in that offense. I think we're going to see a Rams, which is I believe the opener. I think we're going to see a Rams Bills Super Bowl. And I think the Bills will come on top of it. There are a lot of good teams in the NFC, but I don't think, the Bucs with Brady and all that, they're definitely going to try to contend. Brady's small side. I'm sure they'll be in the mix too. But I think the AFC has got a lot stronger conference, in my opinion. And the Rams could certainly win another championship. I see the Bills and the Rams meeting for the Super Bowl championship, and I think Buffalo will.
Okay. And my last question I wanted to ask you, you already answered one part of it, but about advice for those looking to pursue a career in journalism. But where can my audience find you on social media and check out your stories and all that as well?
Sure. I'm on Twitter. I'm at by Mike Mitchell, so that's BYMikeMitchell. You can find me there. The websites I write for, I've mentioned, USFLNewsHub.com, a lot of news hubs out there, CFLNewsHub.com, XFLNewsHub.com, JetPress.com. So those are some of the sites that I write for, places where I write about teams and leagues.
Okay. Hey, Mike, I was going to say thank you so much for coming on tonight, Season 3, Episode 49 of Live with CDP podcast and talking your career in writing and football. And I'd love to have you back again as a guest, maybe in August and September when NFL training camp and the season starts up.
Hopefully the Argos are doing really well by that. So we'll see how
Definitely.
Good record.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for inviting me onto your show, and thanks for it. It's a pleasure.
Okay, definitely. We'll keep in touch with you on social media. And like I said, I'd like to have you back again as a guest in the fall, and we'll talk NFL, and we'll see how the Argonauts are doing by then. And hopefully we'll see you at BMO Field in either July and August.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Mike. Have a great night.
You too, buddy.
You too. Thanks. Anyways, guys, that was, I hope you enjoyed my podcast tonight with Mike Mitchell. He's a pro football writer, contributor for the XFL when they start up next year. He's with the USFL. He writes for the NFL, the New York Jet Press, and the CFL. He covers the Toronto Argonauts as well. You can check him out on the Jet Press, which is all about the New York Jets. That's his team, and on Fansided as well. Mike's a huge Jet fan, Argonauts fan, and your New Jersey Generals fan as well. And right now in the USFL, the two best teams right now are New Jersey Generals, who are 7-1, and the Burlington Stallions, who are 8-0 right now as well. So you can check Mike out on Twitter at by Mike Mitchell, and you can check him out on jetpress.com. And he also writes on CFLNewsHub.com. And also, guys, the Toronto Argonauts, you can check out their website, argonauts.ca, and you can get your Argonaut tickets on the Argonaut.ca as well. The Argonauts regular season and home opener is next Thursday, June 16th at 7:30, I believe, against the Montreal Alouettes at BMO Field. So hopefully they'll have a good crowd for that game as well. Just to let you guys know, my next Live with CDP podcast is Saturday, June 11th at 4 p.m. Eastern. My guest is Tony Ambrugio. He's a freelance story editor for TSN, and he's also a public address announcer for the OHL's Mississauga Steelheads. He's also been on Sportsnet. He's pretty well done everything in the media field. And I'm looking forward to speaking to Tony about his career in broadcasting and media, and now as a freelance editor, story editor for TSN, and being the longtime PA announcer for the Mississauga OHL team, first Mississauga Majors, St. Majors, and then the Mississauga Steelhead. So I'm looking forward to speaking to Tony as well. He's done radio, he's done TV. So I'm looking forward to. So hope you guys can tune in to season 3, episode 50 of Live with CDP podcast this Saturday, June 11th at 4:00. Tony Ambrosio will be on as well. And before we go, guys, I'm just going to show you a little clip of the Argonauts Tiger Cats preseason game in Guelph from last Friday night that I covered. This clip is courtesy of the Toronto Argonauts YouTube channel.
Joined us via live stream. My name's Mike Hogan, along with Natea J. Just counting down to kickoff. About 12 and a half minutes to go before we kick off the second and final preseason game for both your Toronto Argonauts and Hamilton Tiger Cats. Here from Guelph, Ontario, at the University of Guelph, awaiting the opening kickoff here. Flag, it's blown in. Mike Domagallo will kick off the Carlton product, and it's a low line drive picked up by one of the upbacks who takes it across the 40 to the 45, and that's where the Argos will come onto the field with McLeod Bethel Thompson at quarterback. So out comes John Haggerty, 53.2-yard average on 9 punts last week. And he kicks it with that Aussie nose down, end over end thing that comes down at the 11-yard line and will be returned to the 20 to the 25. Still on his feet is Woods. He's going to cut it outside. He's only got Haggerty to beat, and he will beat him. And Lawrence Woods is going to take it to the house for a touchdown for the Ticats. We've got an injured Argo at the point of attack where the first block was thrown. But the Ticats strike first on a long punt return. Snap good, hold good, kick up, kick long, kick good. It's 7-0 for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. As a finalist for the Bronco Nagurski Award for the best defensive player in the NCAA. As a sophomore. Unreal. Pressure, rolling.
Oh!
Intercepted. Harris has it at midfield, and he'll take it back to the 50 to the 45, still on his feet. He'll be taken down at the 46. There's the interception the second time around. And the ball-hawking Argo defense, get ready for that sentence this year, has a turnover, and the Argos, down 7, have it with 4:51 left in the quarter.
No, they are a ball-hawking bunch, but Jalen Morton has been flirting with danger, and this time he throws up a Christmas gift. He scrambles out. Obviously, feels like he has time, but he throws it right. I don't think he saw Harris there. He couldn't have, because he literally gift-wrapped that interception right to him.
Right footer. Boris Beatty has the Aussie as his holder. John Flaherty did that at Western Kentucky. He gets it down. Boris gets it up. And for the first time this year, I can say it's a BD3. 3 points for the Argos, 7-3 Argo for the Ticats, rather, with 1:27 remaining. Jake Reinhardt is the snapper. John Haggerty, the holder. Hi, Haggerty family in Australia.
It's got to be Saturday there right now, right? Living in the future.
Kick is up. It's a BD3. He got it. 7-6. It is a 1-point lead now after BD kicks his second field goal.
You got to master that, because a lot of these times, these pockets, the best plays come from broken plays.
51-yard field goal is good.
Wow.
He got it.
Wow.
So that'll be 3 more for the Ticats, who answer the BD3. And extend the lead, rather, to 10-6.
Just want to see you knock it in for a touchdown. That's it. That's what plagued this team last year, and you want to see them rectify that early this season.
It's number 3 BD3 this half for the Argos on the final play of the first 30 minutes, and 10-9 for the Tabby Kitties. 3 receivers to the near side. Kelly looks that way. He's got the man for the touchdown. Argos score their first major and have taken their first lead.
Yeah.
And it was Isaiah Wright who ended up with the football.
This is just a slant from the slot. Chad Kelly sees it, quick drop, and fires it in there in between the zone defense.
Yeah, but that blocking got you into the league.
Right.
From the 34-yard line, that's where the Ticats will put it in play. Back to pass, looking long, left sideline, has a man, touchdown.
There we go.
Dropped it right in there. Anthony Johnson will take the pass for Newman.
Buffalo. University of Buffalo, Anthony Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. That's why I'm happy. But, hey, that's the first time he's throwing the ball.
Snap and holder, good. He's got it up. Got it!
Sir.
It's a BD3 and a walk-off as BD does it to the Tabby Kitties again.
Anyways, guys, that clip was courtesy of the Toronto Argonauts, and that call was from Mike Hogan, the Toronto Argonauts radio play-by-play announcer on TSN 1050 in Toronto. The Argonauts won that game 18-17, which I was at, and they finished the preseason at 2-0, and the Argonauts start their home opener, regular season opener, next Thursday, June 16th, 7:30 kickoff at BMO Field. You can get your tickets at argonauts.ca as well. And CFL games tonight, you got Montreal, Calgary, 9 o'clock on TSN, by the way. And you can check out the CFL website, cfl.ca. And also, guys, the NBA Finals resume on Friday, June 10th at 9 p.m. Golden State at Boston. Celtics lead the series 2-1. This is a huge game. Boston can take a commanding 3-1 lead going back to Golden State, or the Warriors can even up the series at 2 and have home court advantage again. So a huge game Friday night, 9 o'clock on TSN and on ESPN as well on ABC. And also, guys, like I said, guys, just to let you know, next Live with CDP podcast, season 3, episode 50, will be this Saturday, June 11th at 4 p.m. Again, my guest is Tony Ambrosio. He's a freelance story editor for TSN and also a public address announcer for the OHL's Mississauga Steelhead. He's done everything that you can in the media industry. He's also a teacher at Centennial College in Toronto as well. So we're going to talk to Tony about his career in broadcasting, media, radio, TV, and also as a professor at Centennial College in Toronto as well. So, and maybe talk to him a little bit about the OHL and the Mississauga Steelheads and how their season went as well. And before I go, guys, just to let you know, Live with CDP podcast, the audio version is downloaded to Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, and LinkedIn. And also, guys, you can check me out on TikTok at Live with CDP on TikTok. Again, I just want to say thank you so much to Mike Mitchell, pro football writer contributor for the XFL, USFL, NFL, CFL, Jet Press, and Fansided for coming on tonight and talking some NFL, some CFL, some USFL in his career as a writer. So I really appreciate Mike Mitchell coming on for season 3 for an episode 49. Again, I want to say thank you to everybody watching this live on my YouTube channel. Please subscribe if you already haven't. I'm now up to 106 subscribers, so I really appreciate that. And thank you to everybody watching this on Facebook Live and on Twitter at Chris D. Pame. If you guys like to follow me on Twitter, Chris D. Pame. And like I said, guys, I look forward to my next podcast this Saturday at 4 o'clock with Tony Ambrosio. So again, I want to say thanks to Mike Mitchell for coming on Live with CDP podcast. And we'll look forward to doing my 160th episode ever this Saturday at 4 o'clock. So I hope everybody has a great night. Enjoy the Rangers Tampa Bay Game 5 at 8 o'clock from Madison Square Garden. That series is tied 2-2. And look forward to that game tonight and also the Celtics Warriors game on Friday night as well. And I want to say a special shout out to the Toledo Glass City, who are playing, I believe, tonight in the second round of their TBL playoffs, and also to the Albany Platoons, who are taking on Atlantic City tomorrow night at 7 o'clock in Albany. They're down 1-0 in that best of 3 to Atlantic City. So that's a must win for the Atlantic City. So for the Albany Platoons. So anyways, guys, I hope everyone has a great night. Enjoy the Lightning Rangers game, and we'll see you Saturday at 4 o'clock for another edition of Live with CDP podcast. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening to Live with CDP.